Jean Yojin took a deep breath, then spoke into the microphone. According to the information we have received, there were 450 withdrawals the night before the suspension of operations at Hozong Savings Bank. While other customers were left anxiously waiting for their money, someone managed to withdraw all of their deposited funds. Zhou Wujin nodded in acknowledgement. The individuals who withdrew money include relatives and friends of bank executives, politicians, local dignitaries, prosecutors, lawyers, and doctors, essentially bank VIPs. The bank doors were evidently locked and online banking was blocked, so how could these people make transactions? Even more absurd is that at this time, the Financial Supervisory Service inspectors were already at the headquarters. Yet they took no action despite witnessing the withdrawals. What exactly is the purpose of the Financial Supervisory Service? Is it acceptable for an organization meant to oversee financial institutions to turn a blind eye to such illegal activities? Jean Yojin, unable to contain himself any longer, loosened his tie and shouted. So these bastards locked ordinary customers out of online banking, making sure not a penny could be withdrawn, while they let the VIPs take all their money. And the Financial Supervisory Service just stood by and watched. Zhou Wujin commented sarcastically. Interestingly, included in the list of over 400 withdrawal users is Choi Myung-hwan's wife, the main representative of the Korean Party. As you know, Congressman Choi has vehemently claimed that Kang Jin-hoo is a financial fraudster and that Hozong Savings Bank is safe. Yet the night before he withdrew all his money. Jean Yojin slammed his fist down on the table. How can it make sense that while the president declares Hozong Savings Bank safe, the Korean Party leader is the first to withdraw their funds? Does what the president say sound like nonsense? People like him are the true enemies of the president. We must root out these kinds of enemies. And Congressman Kim Han-cheol is also on the list. He withdrew all the funds from accounts under his and his parents' names. You called the bank run a mistake and referred to depositors rushing to the bank as lemmings, yet he was the first to run for his money. Is he self-criticizing by calling himself a lemming? The majority of the politicians who withdrew money belong to the Korean Party. Members of the National Assembly, mayors, district heads and council members. If we disclose this list, the local community will be in upheaval. Ugh. These shameless rats are infuriating. Zhou Wujin summarized on behalf of the furious Jean Yojin. While these individuals may think they withdrew their own money, it's absolutely not the case. In the event of a bank failure, the remaining funds are returned to depositors proportionate to their losses. Ultimately, the amounts these individuals took reduce the compensation that other depositors can receive. In short, they have essentially stolen from other depositors. All of these individuals must be investigated immediately and all withdrawn funds recovered. If we had put in even half the effort after the earthquake, we would have already caught everyone involved with the Financial Supervisory Service and Hozong Savings Bank. If Hozong Savings Bank goes bankrupt, only the ordinary people will suffer the consequences. Then you will completely become the enemy. The public was stirred up by the lemming remarks. Representative Kim Han-cheol clarified that he did not intend to belittle the depositors, but the controversy showed no signs of dying down. In this situation, news broke that the night before the business suspension, withdrawals were allowed only for VIPs, and the Financial Supervisory Service turned a blind eye to it, causing public outrage to explode. Representative Choi Myung-hwan explained to reporters who had come to cover the story. I had no idea about this at all. It was entirely my wife's doing. Really, you didn't know? My wife manages our finances, so how would I know? There are reports saying you personally called Hozong Savings Bank President Min Sung-ju. How do you explain that? I won't answer that. In a call with reporters, Kim Han-cheol gave a ridiculous response saying, I couldn't access internet banking, so I called an acquaintance who handled it for me. I didn't realize it was a privilege. I thought it was available to all customers. Before hanging up. Protest calls flooded the Korean National Party office. Most of the callers were party members, which was expected since Hozong Savings Bank is in their stronghold area. Take a look down. The Parents Association is back at work today. Since I made my statement, protesters from the Parents Association had appeared in front of the company. Dozens of elderly people gathered, hanging banners and even using loudspeakers to protest. While it's one thing to hold a protest, I don't understand why phrases like leftist incitement and defending the Free Republic of Korea are being thrown around. And why are they waving the American flag? Who else is as friendly with America and likes capitalism as much as I do? Though there was no official notification for the gathering, the police did nothing to intervene, and the three major broadcasting companies and conservative newspapers eagerly reported the event, packaging it well for the public. I couldn't help but smirk as I read the news coverage. These bastards. Did you expect this? No, I didn't think they'd be this trashy. I never imagined they'd only allow withdrawals for VIPs the night before the business suspension. With the remaining money handed over to those who already had it, the amount left for regular customers dwindled further. Can people get that money back? It'll be tough. Even if they face disciplinary action or punishment, recovering the money that's already gone is not easy. At this point, shouldn't we go protest at the Korean National Party? The victims probably went there already. No one believed Hosong Savings Bank was safe anymore. Victims waited for the government's announcement, clinging to a thread of hope. Despite the intense criticism directed at me, the political sphere had sealed their lips. The media also seemed to stop criticizing me at some point. Take, you asked, seemingly puzzled, but didn't anyone know it would come to this? I clicked my tongue and replied, humans are foolish and repeat the same mistakes. You never truly know until a bubble or mismanagement bursts. However, once it does, things that were hidden until then come to light without filters. Hosong Savings Bank grew thanks to the privileges given by Park Si-hyung. If you think about it, out of the private sector projects, barely 1 in 10 had any viability. Nevertheless, Hosong Savings Bank, acting as an investor, made a substantial profit. This was possible because even if they incurred losses, they were cushioned by taxpayer funding. However, the management mistakenly believed that it was due to their exceptional management skills. So they continued to invest in high-risk projects and created special-purpose entities to approve loans for these ventures. When problems arose, they manipulated the accounts to hide them. They were likely confident that any immediate losses could easily be offset by generating revenue. Of course, such illegal lending and cooking the books wouldn't have occurred without collusion. I doubt there's anyone from lower-level officials to politicians who didn't take a cut. The reason this issue hasn't surfaced until now, unlike other savings banks, stems from two factors. One is that the regulatory agency casually reviewed the books because it was connected to the president's in-laws. The second is the bank's continual growth in size. Even if they couldn't recover 1 trillion won in loans, receiving 1.5 trillion won in deposits posed no problem. If they couldn't recover 2 trillion won, receiving 3 trillion won in deposits would suffice. However, as growth began to slow, issues started to arise. Despite the burgeoning fixed costs due to reckless expansion of branches and personnel, the increase in deposits continued to dwindle. Loans were not being collected as scheduled, while high-interest deposits were maturing one after another. To prevent cash flow from freezing, they resorted to issuing subordinated bonds. Yet there's a limit to how long one can juggle debts. Even without my intervention, it wouldn't have lasted a year before collapsing. Until then, they would have continued to suck the money from ordinary citizens like a black hole. This isn't a rare occurrence. Just look at the IMF crisis or the card crisis. Right up until the mismanagement was about to burst, the government remained hands-off. Like always, the burden falls on the ordinary citizens. The suspension of operations at Hosong Savings Bank created a significant stir across the entire country. This also served as evidence of the considerable influence that Kang Jin-woo has in South Korea, particularly in the financial sector, where there's no need for further discussion. From the moment he made his statement, financial companies closely monitored Hosong Savings Bank. No one in the industry believed he pointed out the bank's insolvency without grounds. It was certain that some level of insolvency existed, but the critical question was its magnitude. As detailed audits and on-site investigations began, everyone remained on high alert. Initially, reports emerged about a discovery of insolvency amounting to several hundred billion won, and at that point, many thought the government could intervene. However, the amount quickly surged to 1 trillion won. Given the investigation was still in its early stages, no one had an idea of how much larger it could become. Institutions rushed to sell off their bonds from Hosong Savings Bank. Although the bond's credit rating was ostensibly AA stable, The sudden influx of selling caused the price to plummet by more than half. Investors decided to sell off bonds, willing to take significant losses rather than hold them until maturity, expecting to receive both principal and interest. This clearly indicated the market's perception. Hozong Savings Bank would likely not survive until maturity. At this point, the media also began to sense the seriousness of the situation. Mainstream media typically refrained from publishing articles against the government, opting instead to wait for an official government announcement. However, the government delayed its announcement for nearly 10 days, claiming that the investigation would take longer. If there were no issues, the investigation would have concluded sooner. This was essentially an acknowledgement of the existence of insolvency. Following the announcement of the investigation extension, the bond prices for Hozong Savings Bank plummeted to 20% of face value, and prices for other savings bank bonds also fell sharply. Worries began to spread across the entire banking sector. The media, which had been cautious, belatedly published articles on the situation. Breaking news: Hozong Savings Bank estimated to have over 3 trillion won in accounting fraud. Urgent news: Hozong Savings Bank facing worst accounting fraud in history. Revealed to have sold subordinated bonds up until the day before the business suspension. Protection up to 50 million won for principal and interest. Subordinate bonds are not protected. People who read the article were shocked by the scale of the insolvency. The internet was turned upside down. Is it true that the savings bank insolvency exceeds 3 trillion won? Wow. I'm amazed by the scale of the president's in-laws. I didn't know it was possible to do something like that. It's no wonder they're the president's son-in-law. Is there no possibility of resuming operations? Haha, they're already in a state of capital impairment, so bankruptcy is guaranteed. President versus Otaku Round 2. Otaku wins. The president has clearly lost twice now. He needs to step up his game. As expected, Kang Jin-hoo was right. Ga Jin-hoo. I survived because of Kang Jin-hoo. My father also said he almost bought subordinate bonds due to the pressure from a bank employee. This time Kang Jin-hoo saved many people. By the way, what's going to happen to those who bought subordinate bonds? It doesn't seem to be just a few. With no chance of getting deposits back, there's no hope for subordinate bonds either. On the 15th day, the government finally announced the results of the investigation. Choi Jong-ho, the Financial Supervisory Service chief, stood in front of reporters. The investigation revealed that there was large-scale accounting fraud. The actual BIS ratio of Hozong Savings Bank is 53%, and it is essentially in a state of capital impairment. Therefore, I must inform you that it will be difficult to resume operations for the time being. We will promptly convene the Financial Services Commission to designate it as a troubled financial institution and seek measures for management improvement. As the announcement ended, a barrage of questions from reporters followed. Is management improvement even possible? Isn't this essentially bankruptcy? Last year there was a large-scale audit and on-site inspection, so why couldn't you detect the insolvency? What was the reason for not preventing illegal withdrawals the night before the business suspension? You said there were no issues 2 weeks ago. What on earth happened? As the head of the Financial Supervisory Service, shouldn't you apologize to the public first? Cha Jong-ho wiped the sweat streaming down his face with a handkerchief and said one thing. I will not take questions. Shocked depositors all rushed to the front of the Hozong Savings Bank headquarters. However, the bank doors were firmly shut, with only a notice announcing the business suspension posted. Open the door. Give me my money. Get the president out here. Kim Soon-rai sat down on the ground, bursting into tears. She clasped her hands in desperation. Oh dear. I was completely wrong. I didn't know what subordinate bonds were because I'm so stupid. Without that money, my husband and I will die. Please save us. I'll beg like this, so please return my money. As Han Chan-young watched the news, he let out a hollow laugh. Looks like Kang Jin-hoo won. The whole matter began when Kang Jin-hoo pointed out the deficiencies of Hozong Savings Bank. Initially, it was a fight between him and the bank, but then the president, the ruling party, and the media got involved. The government likely tried to lead to a conclusion that they were right and Kang Jin-hoo was wrong. However, it ultimately turned out that Kang Jin-hoo was correct, and everyone on the opposing side became a liar. Exposing the problems at Hozong Savings Bank was a masterstroke. Unsung Motors had no direct connection to Hozong Savings Bank. Yet they ended up suffering from this incident. The government announced that it would designate hydrogen cars as a future growth engine and would do everything possible to support them, planning to collaborate with local authorities to establish charging stations and allocate subsidies for hydrogen vehicles. However, with this crisis, everything became uncertain. As the ruling forces faced a political blow, the momentum for promoting hydrogen vehicles was inevitably weakened. Even the process for acquiring land for charging stations came to a complete halt. Unsung Motors planned to proceed with the launch of new hydrogen cars as scheduled, but it would be hard to receive the promised support. Could they have orchestrated this on purpose? Han Chanyong was closely monitoring the movements of OTK Company. Separately from the battery factory established through TS Company, OTK Company set up its own battery research lab. Researchers, including Professor Kim Ho-min from Korea University, joined the team. Professor Kim Ho-min was relatively well known in the battery industry. However, since his research field was fundamental science, he wasn't an immediate necessity for companies. As a tenured professor, he wouldn't likely move unless offered exceptionally good conditions. Yet Kang Jin-woo went directly to the university to persuade him to join as the head of the research lab. Was Kim Ho-min truly such a remarkable figure? Han Chanyong muttered, recalling Kang Jin-woo's demeanor during the ex-cop bidding. What kind of picture is he painting? Hozong Savings Bank was truly a hotbed of corruption and fraud. Like digging up sweet potato stems, it seemed endless. 5 auditors from the Financial Supervisory Service working at Hozong Savings Bank were not merely neglecting management oversight. They directly participated in illegal loans and fraudulent accounting. The auditing firms conducted external audits while knowing about the fraudulent activities, yet they issued positive opinions indiscriminately. The loans were so poorly managed that even junior staff members were found to have engaged in identity theft and document forgery to facilitate illegal loans amounting to 15 billion won. When investigations began, the employee cut off contact and went into hiding. Many of the executives and employees of the Special Purpose Corporation were essentially figureheads put in place by the executives, and the multi-million won salaries they received were shared behind the scenes. Amidst all this, Hozong Savings Bank claimed last year to achieve its highest-ever performance, awarding huge bonuses and dividends. While the bank was deteriorating due to insolvency, only the executives and shareholders enjoyed a money feast. During the investigation, ledgers revealing the bribery and entertainment provided to public officials and politicians were uncovered. The prosecution secured relevant testimonies and initially indicted 20 individuals, including Chairman Min Jong-ju and President Min Sung-ju. This led to the unprecedented arrest of the in-laws of the current president. The Financial Services Commission designated Hozong Savings Bank as an insolvent financial institution and began bankruptcy proceedings. While they aimed to recover loans and sell assets, it seemed hopeless for depositors to receive any compensation. The only relief was that the Deposit Insurance Corporation would pay up to 50 million won per person. Korean lawmakers argued that a special law should be created to fully compensate the depositors but were met with the opposition's retort to first return the illegally withdrawn funds before making such claims, causing them to shut their mouths. If depositors were rescued, what would happen to the bond purchasers? Should the government use taxpayer money to repay every time such incidents occurred in the future? There was a high likelihood that victims of the Dongyung Gold Finance bankruptcy from a few years prior would raise fairness issues and file lawsuits for compensation as well. Such a resolution was practically impossible and was merely a statement made to soothe local constituencies. The duty and purpose of the press is to reveal the truth. However, the media sided with the government until the last moment, flooding the public with false articles. When the government finally admitted to its failures, the Jungilbo cleverly implicated Kang Jin-woo in the matter. While the savings banks that allowed the mismanagement and the government that stood by were indeed problems, the tone suggested that Kang Jin-woo, who unveiled it without solutions, was also at fault. Once the article was published, the bulletin board was flooded with protests. These guys still haven't come to their senses. Do they still see the citizens as sheep? Shouldn't they have bankrupted after milking more money from the common people? Is it wrong to go bankrupt early? In summary, they are saying, because we couldn't profit more due to Kang Jin-woo, it's his fault. Trusted and dropped Jungilbo. No matter how much you say here, it's useless. The only answer is to stop subscribing. I realized I'm a fool for paying to read such a newspaper. Don't let it in my house from tomorrow. If caught putting in the newspaper, your fingers might get cut off. Be careful. As criticism intensified, the next day the Jungilbo published an apology and corrective article. However, this incident left the three major broadcasting companies and conservative media unable to avoid a significant image collapse. Ha-eun-ji hadn't eaten properly or slept for days. Given the nature of the locally operated savings bank that had been in business for decades, most customers were acquaintances. Many of those who had purchased subordinated bonds from her were longtime neighbors. If she had sold them to strangers, the pain wouldn't have been as intense. Immediately after the government announcement, she received calls from several clients. As soon as she answered, she was met with screams and curses, and out of fear she turned off her phone. Cautiously, Ha-eun-ji turned her phone back on. Then she made a call somewhere. After several attempts, she finally managed to connect. Ha-eun-ji. Why, yes, branch manager. Ha-eun-ji burst into tears. Well, what are we going to do now? It's so sad for them. If we hadn't sold it. Then Park Junsang said irritably. Hey, why are you making a fuss at us when you were so happy to buy it? Let's be honest. What did we do wrong? We just did what we were told from above. This is driving me crazy. Even as he spoke like that, his voice trembled significantly. He also felt the weight of guilt. Anyway, Yoonji, you should stay home for a while and keep quiet. It won't do you any good to run into the victims. Got it? I'm ending the call now. Beep beep. The call ended. Ha-eun-ji put her phone down and buried her face between her knees again. In the dark room, only her sobs echoed. The front of the Hozong Savings Bank headquarters was a scene of chaos. Depositors collapsed on the cold floor, screaming and wailing. Some elderly people cried so hard they were taken away in ambulances. Fathers who lost their money for a house, grandmothers who lost their life savings earned from working at the market, and grandfathers whose retirement funds vanished, and so on. What kind of money was that? It was money earned through exhausting labor without sleep. Money saved by foregoing food and clothing, even saving every single coin. Yet now there was no way to get that money back. The bank, which they trusted with their deposits, squandered their money recklessly, while politicians who shouted that there would be no problems quietly withdrew their own money and fled in the night. What have the president and the members of parliament been doing all this time? At this rate, we're all going to die. I've always voted for the Korean Party all my life. Even if the country collapses, I've always supported the Korean Party. How can they do this to us? What exactly did we do wrong? I trusted the president's in-laws and left my money with them. How could this happen? Why must we be the only ones suffering like this? An elderly man grabbed the collar of a Jungilbo reporter and shouted. What face do you have to come here? You said you'd resume operations soon, didn't you? That this was just a rumor spread by Kang Jin-hoo. See, come on, sir. Calm down. I waited all this time believing your words. And now look at this. Are you feeling relieved now? The reporter couldn't say a word. He knew well the kind of articles the Jungilbo had published. Other victims tried to stop the old man. Please stop, sir. You punks. You might as well kill me. Ugh. The shouting elder eventually collapsed on the spot. A man stood up and shouted, What good will it do for us to be here? Do you think the politicians will even listen? He said, let's go to Seoul. Let's meet the president or the members of parliament face to face and hold them accountable. People agreed. That's right. Let's go to the Blue House or the National Assembly. Let's get our money back. The victims made their way to Seoul to hold a protest demanding action. The Korean Conservative Party faced a barrage of criticism. Above all, it was shocking that party leader Choi Myung-hwan was at the forefront of the illegal withdrawals. Furthermore, numerous affiliated members were involved, with over 30 names listed when including local councillors. While rookie lawmakers suggested that the illegally withdrawn funds should be returned, no one among those implicated agreed. Politicians, like anyone else, value their own money. Choi Myung-hwan made the absurd excuse, "These are my family's funds, so there's nothing I can do. The money has already been sent home and there's no way to return it." Meanwhile, Kim Han-cheol shouted irritably in response to ongoing media inquiries. "Are you trying to force me to return the money? I made one comment about lemmings and now you keep attacking me. This itself is a challenge to democracy. If you were hurt by the term lemming, don't act like one. Perhaps realizing they could no longer tolerate the situation, the Korean Conservative Party immediately convened a disciplinary committee and expelled Kim Han-cheol from the party. Such crises were not new, it had happened before. Over time, public opinion usually calmed down, and the citizens would cast their votes when election time came around. The Korean Conservative Party remained silent, waiting for the storm to pass. The fallout triggered by the insolvency of Hosong Savings Bank spread throughout the financial sector. For some time, regulatory agencies had been inactive, causing other savings banks to similarly hide their financial issues. Banks, feeling the urgency, began internal audits. Rumors about the instability of other savings banks started to circulate online, leading even stable banks to show signs of a bank run. People hesitated to cash in deposits that were only a month or two away from maturity. They either divided their funds under 50 million won among various banks or withdrew cash entirely. The demand for cash surged, resulting in cash shortages at branches. Home shopping networks saw vaults selling rapidly as people opted to keep their money at home rather than in the bank. Credit tightened severely and the LIBOR rates fluctuated. As deposits flowed out, the reserve requirement ratio and the BIS ratio fell. Savings banks collectively raised interest rates on loans, reduced new loans, and began recovering existing loans. The resulting damage predominantly affected ordinary citizens and small businesses. In any case, it was the financially struggling individuals who suffered the most. The financial instability showed signs of spilling over into the real economy, raising concerns of a banking crisis. Although the government continued to assure the public of stability, citizens no longer trusted the government or the banks. One silver lining was that other savings banks, lacking the privileges enjoyed by Hosong Savings Bank, whose corporate connections extended to the president, had not accumulated significant insolvency. There was only one way to alleviate public fear. Taekyu placed his hand on my shoulder and said, "My friend, it looks like it's up to you." "Why me?" Commercial banks were robust enough to weather the storm, and aside from a handful of savings banks showing clear signs of failure, the rest could hold out. However, if uncertainty persisted, even stable institutions could collapse. In any case, if speaking up could improve the situation, it seemed necessary for me to step forward. I held a press conference in the OTK company building lobby. Domestic and foreign media rushed in with cameras and microphones. Excluding the aforementioned savings banks, the rest are deemed safe. Let me reiterate, since principal and interest are guaranteed up to 50 million won, there's no need for excessive worry. People's actions should precede their words. I presented the reporters with bank books showing that I had deposited 100 million won each in 10 savings banks. So, I deposited my own money. Until now, the media either refuted or distorted my statements. But this time they actively supported my remarks and published comprehensive articles. Let's listen to Kang Jin-hoo regarding money matters. Yeah. They say Kang Jin-hoo is fine, right? We can't trust the government, but let's trust Kang Jin-hoo. I was about to do a bank run, but I stopped after hearing Kang Jin-hoo's advice. Which savings banks did Kang Jin-hoo deposit in? Thanks to that, the once chaotic financial market regained some stability. When did my influence become this significant? Fueled by my actions, financial officials, including the chairman of the Financial Services Commission and the Deputy Prime Minister of Economy, visited savings banks to open accounts and deposit money. However, their amounts were merely 20 million won each, drawing ridicule. Are they joking? I could do that too for amounts under 50 million won. 20 million won is the amount you can receive immediately if the bank halts operations. Quit the petty tricks. Kang Jin-hoo deposited 100 million won. Chairman Kim Dong-suk of the Financial Services Commission explained that he didn't have enough money to save more than that. Comments arose like, why not buy subordinated bonds instead of deposits? But they stubbornly insisted on sticking with deposits. After all, anyone's money is precious. Regardless, perhaps thanks to this charade, distrust in savings banks temporarily subsided. The declining stock market also managed to regain some ground. Financial institutions, including banks and savings banks, took this opportunity to clean up any bad debts and began improving management. The experiences with Hosong Savings Bank created a noticeable atmosphere of restraint against reckless expansion. However, the pain of those who had already suffered losses was ongoing. Looking only at Hozong Savings Bank, the scale of cooking the books was 3.6 trillion won. Among this, 2 trillion won fell under the Deposit Insurance Corporation's guarantee, but the remainder did not. Those who deposited over 50 million won and the investors in subordinated bonds had to withstand losses amounting to 1.5 trillion won. Victims flocked to Seoul, staging protests day after day at Gwanghwamun Square and in front of the National Assembly. The media, perhaps seeking to evade responsibility, has been directing blame for the savings bank crisis towards management and supervisory agencies while urging strong investigations daily. The prosecution wasn't free from criticism either. They targeted those who pointed out the illegalities and corruption, neglecting the actual sources of wrongdoing. Consequently, they announced plans for thorough investigations of relevant parties. However, as always, those who could evade responsibility managed to escape, while those who couldn't afford expensive lawyers. The heads of the Financial Supervisory Service, the Board of Audit and Inspection, and the Deposit Insurance Corporation were all subjects of the investigation. Each of them was closely associated with the president. The public awaited the president's official statement. What would he say regarding this situation involving many relatives and close aides? Park Si-hyung, who appeared at a cabinet meeting, sternly criticized those involved. While ensuring financial stability, we must thoroughly discipline all related parties, regardless of their status, to prevent such incidents from occurring again. I also urge the National Assembly to halt political disputes and start formulating measures for the victims. Instead of taking responsibility as the leader, he shifted blame from a third-party perspective and conveniently passed the responsibility to the National Assembly. The public's response was one of disbelief. What on earth is this nonsense? He is the one responsible. Who exactly is he asking to take responsibility? I was in awe of the president's stern reprimand. Oh, it feels like he's speaking from another realm. Is this a form of detached rhetoric? The furious opposition claimed the need for a special investigation to uncover all the truths surrounding the crisis, but the ruling party immediately dismissed it as a political attack. Park Si-hyung and the Korean Party still had a solid support base that backed them unconditionally. This allowed them to brush off numerous scandals in the past. This time, however, the atmosphere felt different. The president's approval rating, which had been at 52%, plummeted to 27% in an instant, marking the lowest point of his presidency. The approval rating for the Korean Party also saw a dramatic drop. I received a call from Chairman Im Jin-young. You really hit the nail on the head. Let's say it was just luck. As a result, the hydrogen car support plan that the government was progressing has come to a complete stop. Was this part of your plan too? This is the first I've heard of it. Did something happen? Yes. Well, that's one way to look at it. For the time being, they're probably going to have to pour money into resolving the savings bank issue, so they may not have the capacity to support hydrogen cars anymore. Let's have a meal soon. Yes. Have a good day. Not long after the call ended, I received a call from Yuri. Senior, you've been appearing in the news a lot these days. I hope you're enjoying the popularity. Her cheerful voice was still the same. How are you doing? I'm studying hard. I need to keep my grades up to get into OTK company, right? Is she really thinking of applying? Because of you, the school is buzzing again. Do you know that the freshmen are all walking around with their shoulders high whenever your name comes up? I couldn't help but chuckle. Oh, come on, really? It's true. Why would I lie? My dad and Uncle Cheoljun said they were impressed too. Hearing that prominent financial figures praised me makes me feel a bit shy. Oh, the lecture just started. I'll call you again next time, senior. Okay. After ending the call, I turned on the news. A week had passed, but the protests continued. The victims had no clear path to getting their money back. There were countless heartbreaking stories. While the media seemed to keep it quiet, over 10 people had already died. Many victims were elderly and some succumbed to strokes or heart attacks, while the number of suicides was even higher. What might be a small amount to some could be everything to others. Did the moment that money vanished also erase their hope for survival? Several savings banks were tidying up their bad assets and looking for potential buyers. Taekyu said, "How about we seize this opportunity to acquire a savings bank? What would we do with it after acquiring it? Since a savings bank is a financial institution, simply having money doesn't guarantee a successful acquisition. Aside from the failed ones, ultimately, a few existing banks would likely step in to take over. I headed to the Golden Gate branch office with Take-You. I brought the cigarettes, Nuna. And I got coffee. Come on in. Hyunju paused her work momentarily and got up from her seat. Take-You tore open the cigarette pack and handed it to her. Hyunju placed a cigarette in her mouth and held the coffee in her hand. How did you sense the insolvency? I scratched my cheek. It was just a hunch. They grew rapidly, but their financial status seemed too healthy. Honestly, if they had been pointed out for insolvency earlier, I might not have noticed it. So I just probed a bit. Half of that was the truth and half was a lie. Hyunju nodded without much suspicion. Everyone knew there was some insolvency. I never imagined it would be to that extent. You caught it quite keenly. Take-You, looking confused, asked, but how could they not realize they were going under until the very end? It's what we call, too big to fail. There are quite a few terms from Go that are commonly used in daily life like songseek, the basics, murisu, a risky move, and koreaki, countdown. Tima balsa is one of them as well. In economics, it means that larger entities are less likely to fail easily. Hozong Savings Bank boasted an overwhelming stature among savings banks, not far behind the top-ranked IBS Savings Bank. Thus, unlike other savings banks, no one thought that the second-largest Hozong Savings Bank would collapse due to insolvency. Take-You casually remarked. A female employee who sold subordinated bonds left a note apologizing to the victims and then committed suicide. Hyunju nodded in acknowledgement. They probably thought it was their own responsibility. Hearing this makes my stomach churn. The actual wrongdoers seem to be living well. What will happen to the executives? Probably just a few years at most. If they're lucky, they'll get probation. As you know, this country is very lenient towards financial crimes. One characteristic of financial criminals is that they tend to have a lot of money. Jong Kim, the largest law firm in Korea, has taken on the case for Chairman Min Jong-ju. They'll likely assemble a team of former officials. On the other hand, the victims who lost everything have no real way to respond. Nuna, Hyunju said, extinguishing her cigarette. In a way, it's a relief. If this had been postponed throughout the term and exploded under the next administration, it wouldn't have ended like this. I changed the subject. What happened with the investigation from the Financial Supervisory Service? It fell through the cracks. The FSS chairman is about to face a prosecution investigation. Do you think they're in a state of mind to conduct an investigation? They won't be able to waste time for a while. That's a relief. Supervisory bodies have failed to function properly, having been too compliant with the administration. A major reform will be necessary now. The Korean party will also be engulfed in internal strife and won't be like it used to be. Although they all appear as one Korean party, there are various factions within, dividing into mainstream and non-mainstream. Even if the non-mainstream has more people, the mainstream holds the party's leadership and nomination rights. Those excluded from power within the party have no influence. The mainstream of the Korean party is, of course, pro-Park Si-hyung. Thanks to this, they have been able to closely communicate with the administration and lead national affairs. However, as the president's and party's approval ratings plummeted, the party's authority began to shake. Mainstream lawmakers are heavily implicated with Hozong Savings Bank, and the party leader faces allegations of illegal withdrawals. Non-mainstream lawmakers have united to demand the resignation of the party leader and the floor leader, while the mainstream has banded together to resist to protect their power. Nuna, Hyunju smiled. This incident marks the beginning of the lame duck. I casually asked, is Ellie working? It had been quite a while since I last saw her due to various busy schedules. Thinking back, the last time I saw her was when I had lunch with Yuri. Before I could even get an answer, two people walked in. I brought coffee, Jessica. It was none other than Ellie, accompanied by Henry. Take-You quietly asked me, why is Henry here when he's not working? Right. Why is he here? Even though Henry was affiliated with OTK Company, he often wandered in and out of the Golden Gate building. I could guess the reason. It must be because of Ellie. From all the previous clues, it was hard to doubt that Henry had feelings for Ellie. Ellie smiled brightly when she saw me. Oh, Jin-Hoo is here too. With a handsome young man with blonde hair and a beautiful woman with a brown bob sitting together, they gave off a vibe like foreign models. Looking at the two sitting side by side made me feel oddly uneasy. Did Ellie know that Henry liked her? As I pondered this, Ellie suddenly coughed a lot. Cough cough. Hyunju said, if you're not feeling well you should rest. I'm fine. I was taken aback by her words. Are you feeling unwell? Ellie smiled brightly. I'm just coughing a bit. Now that I thought about it, her face was a bit redder than usual and she seemed to be sweating a little. Hyunju reached out and touched Ellie's forehead. That's not good. You should go home right now and head to the hospital. I'm fine really. Are you going to take responsibility if everyone here catches your cold? Ugh. Hyunju looked at Henry and said, please take Ellie home. Understood. As Henry stood up first, Ellie reluctantly followed suit. Wiping her nose, Ellie said, I'll head out first. See you next time. The two left the director's office. We'll head out too, Nuna. Take care. I got up from my seat with Taekyu. As we were going down in the elevator, Taekyu said, do you know what I noticed? What? You act immediately on what you see with Oracle, but when it comes to other things, you're all hesitant and indecisive. Did I? Taekyu snapped his fingers and said, dating isn't about relying on Oracle. You choose based on what you feel in the moment. Even if you like a character, if you make the wrong choice, it could all fall apart in an instant. Are you talking about a dating sim? No, I'm talking about you. Huh. Taekyu shouted, sounding frustrated. Go and make your move, dude. I went down to the underground parking lot. I saw that Hyunju's car was already running. As Henry was about to pull out, he rolled down the window when I approached. What's going on? Ellie was sitting in the passenger seat. It looked like she was in much worse shape than she'd let on earlier. I said to Henry, who was in the driver's seat, I'll take her home so you go ahead and handle your work. Henry unbuckled his seatbelt without saying a word and got out of the car. I took the driver's seat and started the engine. Ellie looked at me with wide eyes. Aren't you supposed to be working? The company runs fine without me. I reached out and lightly touched Ellie's forehead. It wasn't boiling, but it was definitely warm. Why didn't you just take a break if you were feeling unwell? I thought I was fine already. When did this start? I haven't been feeling well since a few days ago when I played squash. That was around the time the chilly spring weather was at its peak. And you still kept exercising? Ellie blushed slightly, embarrassed at having pushed herself without realizing she was sick. I just thought it was a temporary condition. Unlike me, who lies like a corpse when resting, Ellie enjoys exercising. Running 5 kilometers a day is standard for her. I guess a body like that doesn't come easy? Cough. It's definitely cold in Korea. Compared to Hong Kong, yes. This winter has been particularly cold, perhaps due to climate change. It's no wonder long padding jackets became trendy. I'll take you to the hospital for now. Ellie shook her head. Just take me to the hotel. Once I take my medicine, I'll feel better quickly. I joked. Why? Don't you want to get a shot? Instead of answering, Ellie turned her head away. No way, is it real? It's not like that. I just haven't had many shots before. Well, considering how much she enjoys exercising and staying healthy, how often would she need to go to the hospital? I said firmly, still we have to go to the hospital. Ugh. I drove to a nearby hospital. For a while Ellie was silent. I thought she had fallen asleep, but a moment later her voice came through. That woman was really pretty. Who? Your ex-girlfriend. You saw her at school, remember? Oh, Sienna? Ellie nodded and asked, did you like her a lot? Well, I did back then. Thinking about it now, it's kind of funny. I was planning to get married after graduation. It's really funny to think about now. Yuri is cute though. I can see why you likes her. I was taken aback by that statement. What do you mean? Do I like Yuri? Ellie turned to look at me. Then do you not like her? Not that I don't like her, but... Is that the reason you haven't contacted me for a while? I accidentally ran into Ellie after bringing Yuri to the company previously. Since then I've been busy because of Hozong Savings Bank and haven't been able to contact her. She also didn't reach out first. It's a situation that could easily lead to misunderstandings. Was I drifting away from Ellie without even realizing it? Seeing the future is undoubtedly an amazing thing. However, it doesn't determine my life. Investments may reveal everything through their outcomes, but life doesn't work that way. Life isn't just results that appear at a specific moment. It's a collection of daily processes that shape it. Even if someone shows me my destined partner through foresight, does that make it a reason for choice? What meaning does it hold if emotions don't align? Perhaps, as Taikyu said, I was also relying on foresight for things I should be thinking about and choosing for myself. I took a moment to think calmly. Of course, Yuri is cute and pretty. Being with her is enjoyable. But I didn't feel that it was necessarily romantic. Yuri is just a junior. Ellie asked, seeming not to believe me. Really? I stated with confidence. I like you. For a moment, Ellie blinked in surprise. Then her face turned bright red shortly after. As I was about to say something, a loud horn blared from behind us. Beep. Looking up, I realized the light had changed. I hurriedly started the car. Ellie turned her head to the other side and asked in a soft voice, "Since when?" "From the first time I saw you, I think it was like that." "So why didn't you say anything all this time?" "Well, it's because I'm indecisive." "I'm sorry. I should have said it earlier. I didn't make you wait too long, did I?" "Well, that's true, but at least you told me now." Ellie smiled brightly. "I feel like everything's somehow better now." I smiled in response. "It's just a feeling. But you still need to go to the hospital and get your shot." "Ugh." Fortunately, it wasn't a severe cold, so a shot and a prescription from the clinic were enough. After the appointment, I moved to the hotel where Ellie was staying. She pulled out a card key from her pocket and opened the door. "Come in." The room had a layout separating the living room and the bedroom. It looked neat, as if she had just checked in today. "Well, the hotel would take care of the cleaning. Is staying at a hotel okay for you?" "It's convenient since I don't have to worry about anything. There's a pool and a fitness center inside. It's connected to CX, so I sometimes meet Jessica and Henry for meals or coffee." "Is that so?" "Henry is also staying at this hotel. Naturally, they would run into each other often." Ellie took off her outer clothes and hung them on a chair. "I'll go take a shower, so please sit for a moment. I'm feeling sticky after sweating a lot." "Okay." While she was showering, I waited on the sofa. The distance to the bathroom wasn't far, but I could hear the sound of the shower. Wait a minute. Thinking about it, this is a really strange situation. Not only did I enter a hotel room where a woman is staying alone, but now I'm waiting while she showers. To distract myself, I turned on the TV. It was set to CNN. The US was buzzing about the high school shooting that had happened the day before. It's strange that in a country where shootings happen almost daily, they still don't impose stricter regulations. A moment later, Ellie came out wearing a white bathrobe. Her hair was damp and her cheeks glowed with a peachy tint. She dried her hair with a towel. "Your hair has grown a lot. I told you I would let it grow." She looked great with a short cut, but long hair would suit her well too. I was thinking that when Ellie suddenly loosened her belt and took off her gown, I was taken aback. Whoa. Isn't this happening too fast? Just as I thought that, I noticed she was wearing comfy hot pants and a boxy tee under the gown. In that moment, anticipation and disappointment collided in my heart. "What's wrong?" I quickly gathered my expression and said, "Oh, it's nothing." Ellie chuckled playfully. You're not thinking something weird, are you?" "Isn't it stranger not to have weird thoughts in a situation like this?" Ellie started to walk towards me but slipped on the gown she had discarded. Oops. I reached out and caught her before she fell. "Are you okay?" She looked up at me with her light brown eyes fluttering. Then she slowly closed her eyes. What does this mean? Instead of overthinking it, I leaned down and kissed her lips. It was a sweet kiss. Ellie was lying on the bed and I sat beside her. We were holding hands tightly, our fingers interlaced. It's amazing when you think about it. I never imagined I would end up working in Korea. I sometimes can't believe it either. Until I was discharged from the military, I just wanted to graduate and find a job quickly, but somehow I became a CO. Who would have imagined I'd end up like this? If that were the case, we wouldn't have met. True. Ellie would still be working at the Asia branch with Hyunju, and I would be attending school like everyone else. I've had so much fun with you. From startup investments to Brexit and the US presidential election. Though it feels like a long time ago due to the many events in between, both Brexit and the election happened just last year. Ellie seemed to recall something and asked, "What do we say to Jessica?" I wondered how Hyunju would react if she knew. A somewhat intimidating father-in-law image came to mind. I figured it would be better to talk slowly. "Go to sleep. I'll watch you until you fall asleep. Ellie pouted playfully. No, I don't want to sleep. Though she said that, perhaps due to the medication, she soon dozed off. Watching her sleep soundly, I thought she looked adorable. I was contemplating whether to stay or leave when suddenly the doorbell rang. Ding dong. Is it room service? I cautiously opened the door so that Ellie wouldn't wake up. To my surprise, Hyunju was standing there. What brings you here? I was worried, so I came to check. How's Ellie doing? She got a shot and some medication at the hospital earlier. She just fell asleep. Hyunju entered and touched Ellie's forehead after looking at her sleeping face. Luckily, it seems her fever has gone down a bit. Yes. Since you're here, I think I'll head out now. Just as I was about to leave, Hyunju spoke. Hold on a second. Yes. Hyunju stood up, crossed her arms and stared at me over her glasses. I felt uneasy meeting her gaze, so I averted my eyes. What have you two been up to? Oh, we haven't done anything. Then what's the lipstick mark on your neck? Whoa. I quickly touched my neck. Did Ellie kiss my neck too? I was just kidding. I fell for it. Are you two officially dating? I scratched my cheek with my finger. Yeah, something like that. Hyunju approached me, tapped my shoulder and said, if you make Ellie cry, you'll be in trouble. Yes. Anyone who sees this would think she's my father-in-law. Once I decided to date Ellie, two people weighed on my mind. One was Yuri and the other was Henry. I needed to talk to Yuri, but I had to face Henry at work right away. It's better to tell him directly than having him notice later and feel hurt, right? I arranged to meet Henry for a drink in front of the office. When I said I'd go alone, Taekyu insisted on coming along. I'll wait in the car, so text me every 15 minutes. If I don't hear from you, I'll call the cops. Huh. If you get into a fight, you'll lose, right? The opponent is a tall, muscular Westerner. But I confidently replied, you think I'd lose that easily? I heard Henry's hobby is boxing. Oh really? That changes things. I plan to solve this through conversation like a civilized person. But just because I act civilized doesn't guarantee he will too. Should I have worn headgear or something? I got out of the car and entered a whiskey bar that my senior Sangyob often went to. Since it had just opened, there weren't many customers inside. I ordered a single malt whiskey and had a few drinks first. Shortly after, a well-dressed blonde young man who looked like a Hollywood actor walked in. Here I am. Henry sat opposite me. I filled his glass. What's this about? Is it something related to the Golden Gate? Today is not about work. Then, let's drink first and talk later. We emptied our glasses. I got straight to the point. I've decided to date Ellie. Is that so? Henry looked slightly surprised but surprisingly composed. Is he forcing himself to hide his emotions? I somewhat anticipated this. It's a good thing though. Congratulations. Are you being sincere? Of course. But you like her too, don't you? At my words, Henry's eyes visibly widened. His surprise was evident. What? I think it would help us work better if we're honest with each other. Henry hesitated for a moment but soon admitted, I've never seen such a beautiful woman in my life. So it's true. I smiled wryly. I guess coming to Korea wasn't only about work then. Now that I think about it, it seems so. I wanted to be close to her, even just a little. Since meeting her, no other woman has caught my eye. Henry loosened his tie and unbuttoned a few shirt buttons. Then, as if resolute, he downed his drink. I always thought I was confident in front of everyone, but standing in front of her makes me feel like a little boy. I don't even know why I feel this way. That can happen. Hearts don't always follow our will. It seems like it won't be easy. How do I persuade him to give up? When did you start liking her? Maybe it was when I first saw her smoking. Since that moment, I think I fell for her without realizing it. Right. Smoking. Huh. What does that mean? Doesn't Ellie not smoke? Is she secretly smoking behind my back? Henry looked flustered. Ellie? I was talking about Jessica. I was taken aback. What? Why is Hyunju Nuna coming into this? Realizing there was some misunderstanding, Henry spoke with surprise. Wait a minute. You thought I liked Ellie? Ah. So all this time he was looking at Hyunju Nuna, not Ellie? That's why he was hanging around the same hotel and visiting the Golden Gate building even when there was no work? I can't believe Henry has feelings for Hyunju Nuna. Thinking about it, it's not that strange. Hyunju Nuna is just as attractive as Ellie. But why did I automatically assume it was Ellie? Could it be that racial bias played a role, thinking he'd naturally like a white person? Did you desperately learn Korean because of Hyunju Nuna? Yes. Thanks to that, Henry's Korean skills have improved dramatically. He already has a knack for languages, being able to speak multiple ones. It's amazing how powerful love can be. There's a bit of an age gap though. Henry is 3 years older than me, meaning there's a 7-year difference with Hyunju Nuna. At my comment, Henry shook his head firmly. That isn't important. That's true. What does age matter in love? What matters is the heart. In this day and age, a 7-year gap is nothing. I imagined Henry and Hyunju Nuna together. Surprisingly, they seem like a great match. The grandson of the Golden Gate CEO and the head of the Korean branch. If they become a couple, would we have a historic couple in the finance world? Anyway, I'm relieved he doesn't like Ellie. Or at least that's what I thought until Henry said, "Please help me." Excuse me. For a moment I nearly asked, why me? The only person I can ask is you. Well, this isn't exactly America, so who should he ask for help? Henry's expression was too earnest to pretend otherwise. Suddenly, I recalled James C. Goldman's request to take care of his grandson. That grandfather must be of an age to meet his granddaughter-in-law. But even if he asks for help, what am I supposed to do? Just then my phone rang. Hold on a second. Why haven't you contacted me? Are you in trouble? Should I call the police? Never mind that, just come over. Just wait. I'll come to rescue you. Taekyu quickly entered and sat next to me, warningly saying, I'm speaking on behalf of my friend here, so let's put it nicely. Keep your hands off Ellie. That's not it. What nonsense is this guy spouting as soon as he sits down? As I was about to explain the situation, Henry looked flustered. I reassured him. It's okay. This friend keeps secrets well. Besides, if you need help, wouldn't it be better to ask her biological brother? Seemingly agreeing with my suggestion, Henry nodded and I began explaining to Taekyu. At that, he suddenly exclaimed in shock. What? You like our Nuna? Shh. Keep it down. Is it necessary to advertise this all over town? Then he spoke in an excessively quiet voice. Blonde beauties will be lining up, so why specifically our Nuna? Henry is the perfect groom in every way. Looks, education and family background. It wouldn't be surprising if he were linked to Hollywood actresses or Victoria's Secret models. Even in the office, there are more than a few female employees who like Henry. He would likely take first place in a popularity vote. Come to think of it, you liked our Nuna too. Is it really necessary to bring that up now? Why dig up something from middle school? Henry nodded as if he understood. That's quite natural. I would feel the same way. I quickly changed the subject. What does Hyunju like? Work. Right. That's the problem. If being a workaholic is a disease, then Hyunju is severely ill. Henry asked, when did she become that way? Since she joined Golden Gate. When our Nuna was in college, she used to date quite a bit. As he said, the reason Hyunju stopped dating is entirely because of Golden Gate. With no time to sleep, when could she possibly have time for a relationship? Henry's expression grew somber. It might have been easier if she were seeing someone else, but the issue is work, not a person. What do we do about this? Taekyu confidently said, I'll do my best to help, so just trust me. At that, Henry looked relieved. Really? Yeah. I'm quite knowledgeable about relationships. Thank you. Seeing him happy, it seems unnecessary to mention that he's never dated and learned about love through games. I filled his glass. Let's just drink tonight. Henry typically has strong self-control and never drinks to the point of getting drunk. But perhaps because he revealed his hidden feelings, he drank so fast it was almost scary. Take it slow. I'm fine. We're the ones who aren't fine. Without me even asking, he started rambling about how beautiful Hyunju is and how much he loves her. All sorts of flowery language in English flowed out. At this rate, he might start reciting Annabelle Lee. He was so smitten that Taekyu, unable to take it anymore, said quietly, Isn't Nuna's looks not that impressive? What can you do if that's how he feels? Henry, laughing and crying alone, eventually collapsed, burying his head on the table. We helped the completely exhausted Henry back to his hotel room. Seeing him lying on the bed drunk made me feel sorry for him. What is love, anyway? The aftermath of the savings bank crisis continued to unfold. The businesses that the closed savings banks had invested in came to a standstill. This included several substantial project financing and redevelopment initiatives. Concerns were raised that the instability in the savings banks could worsen the construction industry. As public opinion swayed, political circles were also in turmoil. Though the in-laws' wrongdoing cannot be solely attributed to the president, there is no excuse for failing to notice accounting fraud despite a thorough 4-month audit and field investigation of savings banks conducted last year. Key figures associated with Park Si-hyung, such as the Financial Supervisory Service head, the Board of Audit and Inspection chair, and the Korea Deposit Insurance Corporation head, were all dismissed in succession. The government stated it would conduct joint investigations into banks, savings banks, securities firms, and insurance companies as soon as the agencies were reorganized, but this felt like a classic case of closing the barn door after the horse had bolted. Trust in government announcements had eroded significantly. Park Si-hyung had maintained control over the Korean Conservative Party using the power of nominations. However, with this crisis his faction weakened, leading to intensified competition for party leadership. Naturally, the connection between the party and the government began to dissolve. Park Si-hyung was elected on the promise of revitalizing the economy. Throughout his tenure he implemented business-friendly policies, cultivating an image as the economic president. Regardless of the reality, the public firmly believed in the president's assurances of prosperity for all. Yet this incident shattered that trust. Many deposited their money based on the government's reassurances and waited for the president's assurances that there were no issues. What was the outcome? Individuals suffered losses ranging from millions to hundreds of millions of won. Over 1 trillion won of ordinary people's money disappeared, but avenues for compensation seemed bleak. Those with wealth and power were the first to escape the sinking ship, while the detained executives offered only excuses, refusing to take responsibility. No one was willing to accept accountability. Angry victims protested daily at the Korean Conservative Party headquarters, the National Assembly and Gwangwamun, demanding solutions. In response, conservative groups like the Parents Association conducted counter-protests, shouting, "Who told you to use savings banks? It was a mistake to use savings banks just because they offered higher interest rates. Why are you begging the government for money?" And, "We love you, Mr. President." As I was waiting for my order from the Chinese restaurant, Taekyu, who was watching TV, asked in disbelief, "Why are the parents' union over there doing that? Are they getting paid or something? I heard they're giving out 20,000 won each. Where is that money even coming from? Just protesting doesn't make money magically appear. Even if they aren't being paid, protests require funds." However, since Park Si-hyung took power, the parents' union has boasted an endless supply of funding, traveling across the country to hold protests. According to them, they operate by collecting small amounts of money donated by elderly people selling recyclables. But considering the scale of their protests, they always charter buses and provide packed lunches, moving in an organized and agile manner. Naturally, it raises suspicions that some financial support is coming from somewhere. Sang Yeep, a senior, commented, "I'm glad they're no longer showing up in front of the company. I used to get so annoyed every time I saw them. That's one relief, but still it doesn't look good for them to be acting like that in front of the victims. If it was their own money that had disappeared, wouldn't they be the first to lose their minds? Do you think Park Si-hyung will just stay quiet? He's probably grinding his teeth in frustration. Right now he might be too busy handling the fallout, but who knows what tricks he may pull later." Just as the food arrived, I called Henry to the CEO's office. He looked pale, as if he had been drinking and his beard wasn't properly trimmed. "How are you feeling?" I asked. "I'm fine," he replied. Despite his words, it seemed he was still feeling queasy. He even showed up late today. Henry cautiously asked, "Did I make any mistakes yesterday?" If I told him about his embarrassing behavior, he might not be able to hold his head up for a while, so I reassured him that nothing significant happened. Henry let out a sigh of relief. "I'm glad. It's my first time drinking like that. Love is really complicated." Taekyu pushed the bowl of spicy noodle soup toward me. "I ordered seafood jampong, so let's eat this and recover." I wonder if Americans can really recover with jampong? Isn't it too spicy and could cause an upset stomach? As I tore open the plastic wrap, The news reported the Hozong Savings Bank was raided. In front of the closed main branch, victims were still unable to leave. Taekyu clicked his tongue and asked, "Is there really no way for those people to get compensated?" "Probably not." Park Si-hyung shifted the responsibility to the National Assembly, asking them to come up with a solution. There were talks about creating a special law centered on the Korean Banking Association to provide relief, but fairness issues made it impossible. There were even discussions about raising the deposit insurance limit to 100 million won, but it's not likely. Even if it happens, it won't apply retroactively. Senior Sanjiop added, in the case of subordinated bonds, since there was mis-selling, they could win a lawsuit. But the problem is the entity that should pay is bankrupt. There seemed to be no solution. Some employees knelt before the victims and apologized tearfully. I remembered hearing about an employee who couldn't bear the guilt and committed suicide. Meanwhile, those higher up were only thinking of ways to escape responsibility. Why don't we make some donations? Thanks to the success of Last Fantasy M, we have some surplus, Taekyu suggested. His words made me pause for a moment. The President and National Assembly members only understand the value of their own money. They don't realize the value of others' money. If we take the initiative to donate, won't they have no choice but to contribute as well? If they hold out and don't donate, they'll face criticism for that too. I nodded. That's an excellent idea. OTK company donates 10 billion won to victims of savings bank scandal. Excerpt. Young Ji-hong, the PR team leader at OTK company, stated that although the amount is small, he decided to donate in the hope of providing some comfort to the victims. He also expressed a desire for political figures, including the President and members of the National Assembly, to unite and join the cause if they empathize with the victims' pain. Once the article was published, public reactions were explosive. Wow. OMG. What are the lawmakers doing? Come on, open your wallets as one. Return the money you illegally withdrew, you jerks. I'm really curious how much the president will donate. Faced with public outcry, the Korean government felt compelled to act. However, they opted to raise funds anonymously, only disclosing the total amount, which drew further criticism. The Blue House also started a fundraising effort, with President Park Si-hyung donating 30 million won. Haha, 30 million won? Are you kidding? Mr. President, I'm genuinely impressed by your scale. Your in-laws swindled over 3 trillion and you only donated 30 million? Last year your assets were registered at 10.9 billion. What's so much about that? You were a businessman before entering politics, right? You even led Unsung Heavy Industries. You really have no conscience. If you don't want to donate, just say it. Don't waste money and eat criticism. Please don't be too hard on him. Given his personality, he probably shed tears over that 30 million. He probably wanted to take out Kong Jin-hoo, who donated first. He must be very meticulous, fearing he won't be called the economic president. It seems PAS, Political Advisory Services, business is doing well these days, but honestly 30 million is a bit much. So whose is PAS? Criticism surged even to the Chonghua Day Bulletin Board. President Park Si-hyung hurriedly announced that he would donate an additional 20 million won, bringing the total to 50 million won, but it rather backfired. Perhaps due to this fallout, the president's approval rating dropped an additional 3% in the opinion polls, falling to 24%.